Hello and happy Wednesday, all you fabulous people. Welcome to another episode of the motherfucking Melanin Mayhem podcast, hosted by me, your favorite country girl, Renee Davis. If this is your first time warming yourself by the mayhem fire, welcome. Over here, I aim to bring you interesting stories of some of the most prolific, audacious, and downright diabolical motherfuckers that you may have never heard of, but you should have. And if you have heard of them, you haven't heard the story the way I tell it. We are over here dispelling the myth, the lie, the untruth that there are crimes that black people don't commit. Honey. We do it all. Been doing it all. And I tell it all. Now that we've got the niceties out the way, Noir Nation, what's cracking, baby? I have missed y'all. Ooh, woo, your girl has been going through it this week. But knowing that I got y'all to kiki with every week is giving me the boost that I need to keep it pushing. Because we going to survive and thrive in 25. Yes. Now, let me tell y'all something this week. It's two types of people in this world. Those that aren't criminals and those that are criminals. Now, the aren't criminal kind of people, they may go their entire lives and never get in trouble with the law in any major way. And if the not criminal kind of person does find themselves in trouble with the law, there is normally a damn good reason for it. They do their time, they pay their fine, and they never have another issue with the law. Now, that other motherfucker, I'm talking about the nigga that is a criminal by occupation. Them niggas be criminaling all the time. Every day, every chance they get, they never let an opportunity to crime up the place go. And today, I got the story of some niggas that was just criminals to the core. These motherfuckers was all over the place too. Y'all, this story is crazy. I can't even make this shit up. I swear, I'm about to tell y'all about some fuckery and shenanigans at a chicken joint. A motherfucking chicken joint. We talking about chicken this week. A lot of y'all be asking me where I get these stories from. I swear sometimes they just fall in my lap. I was researching last week's mayhem maker, Corey Morris, and I saw a little blurb about some other serial killers around, and there was this one name, and then I Googled it, and boom, here's a murder about goddamn chicken. And I just knew that this was one of ours out here with this bullshit. So instantly, this week's was found. And wait till I tell y'all about this shit. Today, Noir Nation, I'm going to tell you about a group killing that took place in a sleepy little Texas town called Kilgore. And it would end up being one of the state of Texas's longest unsolved mass murders, which kicks it into the prolific category, right? Because these niggas almost got away with it. Because it's an audacious crime for sure, you know I gotta tell you about it. The town was in an uproar. Now let me stop teasing y'all. Bringing to the front of the congregation this week's Melanin Mayhem maker, Mr. Darnell Hartsfield and his cousin, Romeo Pinkerton, a.k.a. the Melanin Mayhem makers of the Kentucky Fried Chicken Killings. Okay, Noir Nation, we don't have any background today. We are going straight into the meat of the matter. Now, Darnell Hartsfield, I can tell you, he was born in 1961. This nigga here was Debo. If he saw it and he wanted it, he took that shit. He'd break into your shit and steal whatever was in that bitch, period. And the niggas that he ran with, they was on that same shit. Like his cousin, Romeo Pinkerton, who happened to be born in 1959. Now, Romeo liked to rip and rob as a way to eat too. I'm talking about as young niggas. Cause please understand, YN's been around for a long ass time. Like Romeo got popped for real the first time in 1981, but Darnell had been jumped off the porch. They was deep in that burglary running up in your shit. So picture it. These boys have been running amok in Kilgore, Texas, The law know who they are. Everybody know who they are. This is a small little town, right? It's September 23rd, 1983. It's Friday night, so that means football games is jumping and ain't nobody got time to cook. So the local Kentucky Fried Chicken, that motherfucker bumping. Mm-hmm. And the crew, they know what it is, and everything is going smoothly. The manager, she leave about 5 o'clock. The assistant manager, 37-year-old Mary Tyler, she got off work about 7 and ran to the house to go see about her own children. But she was going to have to come back to the restaurant at closing time because, she got to do that manager shit, balancing the registers out and making the deposits. So, according to the streets, at some point in time during this busy day, Miss Mary was on the phone talking to somebody and she was being a little too chatty in front of the public. She was talking about how somebody had missed making a deposit and the store had stacks on stacks on stacks in that motherfucker. Now, Noir Nation, it's too late for Miss Mary, but my PSA to you, don't be out here talking about your bread in the bakery. You don't know what a motherfucker might cook up for your ass. But anyway, the night goes on. It's finally closing time. Mary done popped back up on the scene. Her daughter had just left the restaurant to go hang out. It's Friday night. And Mary, 39-year-old Opie Ann Hughes. Opie Ann. Aw. She's still standing around shooting the shit. And then there's also 20-year-old Joey Johnson. He's the cook. Now, right as Kim was leaving, that's Mary's daughter, two of Joey's homies pulled up. 19-year-old Monty Landers and 21-year-old David Maxwell. And so they let them in the restaurant. I mean, it's Friday night. These young men finna get ready to go get into some shit. You know what I'm saying? So they just kicking it while they homeboy close up. So as Kim is leaving, she see all this going down, right? It's about 10 o'clock at night. So she go off and she do her thing. But it's Friday night. She could use a little cash infusion. So she head back to the KFC to hit Mary up for a couple of dollars. Well, back at the KFC, they doing their regular shit that you do when you close up for the night. So Mary counting down the registers. Opie Ann is probably sweeping and shit. The boys are cleaning the fryers and taking out the trash like they would normally do on any old day. Then this regular Friday night, it took a hard left on Bullshit Avenue. So now it's about 11:30 and Mary's daughter pulls back up at the Kentucky Fried Chicken to hit her mama up for a little spending money. She get out the car and something just don't feel right. Now, the front door is locked because the restaurant is closed, but the lights are still on. Kim is knocking on the door, but nobody is answering, yet everybody's car is still in the parking lot. So Kim goes around to the back of the restaurant, and the back door is standing wide open. She go in. The restaurant is towed the fuck up. Ain't no clean shit. Wait a minute, is that blood on the floor? What the fuck? And ain't nobody in here, like the restaurant is empty as fuck. So Mary's daughter calls her stepdaddy to see if her mama just so happened to be at home. He answers the phone and he like, no, Mary's still at work. And she's like, no, I'm here and this bitch empty and tow up. So what the fuck is my mama? So they decide to call the hospitals because maybe there's been an accident. So they call in the emergency rooms. Sorry, ma'am, there's nobody here by that name. Okay, now it's time to call 911 because the shit has definitely hit the fan. So the Kilgore Police Department, they pull up and they start investigating. They called the store manager, a chick named Leanne Raspberry. They like, Miss Leanne, can you come down here to the store? Because there's been an incident and we need you to take a look around and help us figure some stuff out to figure out where everything should and should not be. So Leanne, she hops right on up and she head on over to the Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now the police, they looking around, but the 5 people are nowhere to be seen. It's like they have vanished into thin air. What the fuck has happened at this restaurant? Now, the colonel is not going to be pleased that his chicken shack of 11 herbs and spices has been desecrated like this. Looked like somebody got into some type of strugulation type of situation because it's flour all over the floor. And it looked like somebody been skating through it. And wait a minute, them little paper chicken hats that they used to wear back in the day, it looked like 2 somebody's hats is on the floor. Wait a minute. And then right there by the wall, by the counter, it's a big ass dent in the wall. Look like somebody tried to put somebody through the wall. Oh shit. And wait a minute, somebody leaking. Cause it's a 9-inch pool of blood right here on the floor. Wait a minute. Here go a trail of blood leading to the back office. And the office is all in a disarray, and there's blood on papers and on the wall and on some folders and on the cash box. And then there's some more blood over here by the cash register. Now, this cash register receipt show that the Chicken Shack took in about $2,000 a day. But ain't not a drop of money in this motherfucking restaurant. Now, there's also blood on the petty cash box. Who the fuck doing all this bleeding? So the cops, they keep searching the perimeter, but these 5 white people ain't nowhere to be found. So they put out an all points bulletin, but at this point, they really don't know what they're looking for because all their vehicles are right here. They don't know how they left. Baby, it was a long night for the families of them 5 individuals. No calls, no contact, nobody popping up talking about y'all ain't gonna even believe what just happened to me. It was a long night. Well, that following morning, September 24th, 1983, a dude named Arthur Warlick. Now, Arthur is out just doing his job. His job is to check oil field wells, right? So he out in the field somewhere out in Russ County, and it's about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and he just driving along. Now, mind you, this is rural roads, so there is nothing out here to see but this little asphalt that you're driving on and this grass. So your boy Arthur just driving, and all of a sudden, he sees some shit that kind of blow his mind. Now, it looked like a bunch of people over there off to the side of the road just laying in the grass sleep. What the fuck is going on here? And you know, as humans, we cling to putting an explanation to some shit. We gonna make it make sense, right? And so Arthur was like, maybe they had a real good night last night and they just passed out on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. That's perfectly possible, Arthur. Let's go with that. So he stopped and he get out to see what the joke is. And goddamn, if all 5 of these motherfuckers ain't dead, I'm talking about shot up like a motherfucker. Execution style. Arthur is freaking the fuck out. He get on the radio and call his boss and was like, look, get the law over here right goddamn now. We over here off Walker King Road. They need to get here immediately. Not later, immediately. And so, of course, Arthur is sitting here looking at this murder scene in disbelief. I mean, all of these victims are laying face down in a row, except one of them. Opie Hughes, she was laying about 40 feet off to the right of the road, and her clothes ain't on right. Now, Opie, she's laying there with a fistful of grass in her right hand and a fistful of hair in her left. She was clenched up. Ooh, that's a horrible way to go. Now, she had 2 bullets in her head, too. And then Mary Tyler was laying face down. She had a bullet in her head and one in her spine. David Maxwell got 2 bullets in his head. Now, Monty Landers got 2 bullets in his head, too. But Joey Johnson, he looked like he might have been the last one in the row to get shot. And he was trying to raise up a little bit of something because he got 3 bullets while everybody else got 2. He got a bullet in the head, one in the neck, and one in his right side. Like, goddamn, did y'all want to make sure that they were dead? Well, damn. Now we know where the Kentucky Fried 5 disappeared to. 14 miles south from the restaurant. That's a long-ass way to drive. It's also in another jurisdiction from the Kentucky Fried Chicken, where all this shit actually started going down at. Now it's gonna really be some bullshit because we got 2 sets of cops trying to work together, and we know that shit don't never work out like it's supposed to. Kilgore police, they got the robbery and the kidnapping, and the Russ County Sheriff Department got them 5 murders. So they called in the Texas Rangers to round out the law enforcement vegetable soup. And I guess it was warranted because this was in 1983 and 5 white people just got unalived at the same time. This was a mass casualty event before mass casualty events was a thing. Everybody and they mama was on this goddamn case. So the police, they collected evidence and they put up crime scene tape and shit. And the investigators are doing their investigate shit because this is definitely a robbery. It's definitely a kidnapping. And it's definitely a killation of the mass variety. But who did the robbing? And who did the napping? And who is this killing ass killer that's out here killing? And why the fuck did they take these 5 people out that restaurant to kill them somewhere else? As far as evidence goes, they got hella fingerprints. They got blood all over the restaurant. After they found the bodies, autopsies happened, and they pulled bullets from a .38 and a .357 and possibly a third gun. So the cops are thinking that there's 2, maybe 3 assailants that pulled this shit off. While they were doing the autopsy on Joey, they found a fingernail in his like waistband of his jeans, and the fingernail didn't belong to him. Well, maybe the killer lost his fingernail. And then there was Opie Ann's autopsy. Come to find out, they raped her before they killed her. God damn it. So here's the theory on what happened that night. The assailants waited until the store was closing. And what probably happened was somebody was coming out, taking out the trash, and then they overpowered the workers and the two friends, and some type of struggle broke out. The assailants whoop up on the victims and exert their control. They get all the money out the restaurant. They take all the wallets and all the jewelry off the victims, and they made them get into a vehicle and then drove them out to Rusk County to send them to the upper room. Now, please understand, the block was hotter than fish grease. I'm talking law enforcement of all kinds everywhere. And every known criminal in the county was suspect number one. I'm talking the law was rolling up on everybody. It got so tight that the Kentucky Fried Five killings even fucked up the dope game in Kilgore. Oh, yes. You see, at the time, the FBI had this little undercover sting operation type of thing going on. They had wiretaps looking for the dope dealers. Man, they let that dope shit go and started listening out to see which one of these drug dealers had ran up in the KFC. We're going to put a little pin in that for just a second, because I want to talk to you about something else, and then we're going to come back and talk about the drug dealer. The cops are literally hounding every motherfucking criminal in the county. And your boy Darnell and Romeo, they was on that list too. And so the story that they gave the police was plausible enough to pass that first glance. Romeo said that he was still locked up in prison when the murderation happened, so he couldn't have done it. And so they were like, okay, yeah. And he was like, yeah, some kind of way there was a hurricane or something that came through the area. And he was like, I didn't get out until after the hurricane. The murder happened before the hurricane. So they was like, okay. And then Darnell said that he was with his girlfriend and his people could vouch that he wasn't even in the county that night. Now, through the lens of 2025, I would say that these alibis are easily checked with a quick Google search. But in 1983, your fingers could only do the walking through the yellow pages. And so that kind of just left the door open on these two while they kept investigating some more and checking out alibis for everybody. Now, guess what, Noir Nation? The cops in this situation were equal opportunity about the criminals that they were shaking down. I know that usually doesn't happen, right? We usually are suspect number one. But in this case, if you were a criminal, that was the main thing. And there was one particular criminal, this main motherfucker that they just knew had something to do with the unaliving of these 5 white people. And it just so happened to be a white man named James Earl Mankins Jr. Now, James, or Jimmy, you know, that's what they do. He was a drug dealer. He was also the son of a Texas state representative, his namesake, James Mankins Sr., Jimmy Sr. And on the day of the murders, James had just got out of jail that very same day for some other criminal bullshit. So all the cops was like, wait a minute, this motherfucker looking real good for this crime. And Jimmy was known to carry a 38, and a 38 was used in the crime. Okay, we cooking now. And then that fingernail that they found on Joey, well, guess who also had a finger that was missing a nail? That goddamn James Manning Jr. Yep, his middle finger, the nail was gone, but the other nails weren't. So that was it for them. They just knew that James Manning had did it. Because don't nobody chip a nail but a killer, I guess. So they took a shitload of pictures of James's finger. And then they waited for James's motherfucking fingernail to grow back. And then they clipped it off and they kept it. But in 1983, there wasn't no such thing as DNA. It didn't exist yet. So they tried to treat the fingernail like a bullet. Yes, y'all heard that. They tried to treat the fingernail like a bullet. They wanted to do like a ballistics type of situation and see if they could match up the striations and grooves like they do on a bullet to a motherfucking fingernail. They thought that, you know what, if a fingerprint is individual and unique, a fingernail should be too. Okay, but you know, it's 83 and these tests take time. let's get back to Darnell and Romeo for a minute. You see, while the dope boys might have been having a little trouble moving their product around the blocks because everything was so hot, the criminal double mitch wins of the strong arm game, they didn't give a fuck. Like 3 days later, do you understand that they was making a motherfucker lay it down somewhere else? Yes, they was out here just criming up the place. Now they still cleaning up over at the KFC. And these niggas is over here about 30 miles away terrorizing some new victims. Yeah, see, this time they knocked over a convenience store. On September 26, 1983, ran up in that bitch and made 2 female employees lay down on their stomachs with their heads in their hands, kind of like how the KFC people will pose. Yeah, like that. Now, they caught up with Darnell's ass like 3 weeks later, like October 1993, and they charged him with aggravated robbery. And they interrogated him some more about that KFC shit because it looked a lot like this robbery. Darnell was like, nope, I don't know what you're talking about. Noir Nation, they gave this nigga a polygraph, and do y'all know he passed? Please tell me it can be done, baby, even when you guilty as a motherfucker. Well, they couldn't pin him down on the KFC killings, but they did nail his ass to the wall on that store robbery. They gave him 20 years, but this will be a cycle of get caught, get sentenced, get paroled. Get caught, get sentenced, get paroled. Like this nigga stay in and out of jail. Him and his cousin. But at the same time, you got to think about this robbery, this first one that we know of. Nobody got killed. So this makes me think that somebody at the KFC either knew or recognized somebody in the robbing crew. That's the only thing that makes sense. I mean, I understand these niggas will rob you like it ain't nothing, but it don't seem like they was killers. To jump off the porch like that, I'm thinking that there had to be some extenuating factors. Now check this shit out. About a week after the killations, they offered a $50,000 reward. Oh, that sounds good, don't it? That's a nice round number in 1983. That'll get the dimes dropping. But the leads was coming in, but they started slowing up real good. I wonder why. Could it have been because the $50,000 was in Monopoly money? Yeah, Monopoly money. You see, when the people would call in to inquire about the reward, for the information, they was told that, you know what, you tell us what you know. We don't exactly have the money yet, but when we get it, if something comes from what you tell us, we'll get you the money eventually. What? No. The peoples was like, oh, no. And they did that shit for a whole year. Then on the 1-year anniversary of the Kentucky Fried Chicken killings, they finally put the money in the bank for the reward. Colonel Sanders put up $25,000, and the rich white citizens of Kilgore put up the other $25,000. But the case stayed ice cold. Now, the authorities, they would go back to that fingernail that they found on Joey, and they think that James Mankins is good for it. So in November of 1983, the ballistics on James' fingernail finally comes back. Well, according to the lab, the motherfucking fingernail that they found on Joey could only have come from James Mankins. Oh, shit. So they go back to working on building a case on James Mankins. They took it to a grand jury in like 1985, but the grand jury was like, I don't think so. And they didn't return an indictment. But the law was not giving up yet. Now, again, these things take time. And in 1983, time was moving slow. Don't expect no real movement in this case for a few more years. And by few, I mean like 10 years. But in the meantime, they still like Darnell and Romeo since they know that they are known to lay a motherfucking down, even though Darnell passed that polygraph and Romeo claimed that he was already locked down. Well, in 1995, the law felt that they really had to do something. Too much time had passed. 5 people were killed and they didn't have nobody in custody. They couldn't do that. So they went back to James Mankins. He's still a bad boy. He's still been criming it up in Kilgore. And matter of fact, right at that time when they just felt that they needed to move, he just so happened to be locked up. So what they do? They wire up his cellie. And they're going to try to get the cellie to get something incriminating on James. Well, nothing really came out of that. And they back to having just that goddamn fingernail. Man, let me tell you something. They put all their hopes and dreams on that goddamn fingernail. And they went ahead and indicted James Mankins on March 7th, 1995. Yeah, on a fingernail. We got our man. They locked up James while they sent that fingernail off to the best forensics laboratory in the country. You know, they got to have their ducks in a row, right? Well, on November 13th, 1995, like 6 months later, after doing some real fucking forensic testing on that goddamn fingernail, tell me why it didn't belong to James Mankins. They even tested his girl. It wasn't her fingernail neither. Can you say egg all over y'all face? Y'all been hooping and hollering about this goddamn fingernail belong to this man, and it's not his shit. So they gotta let him go. At this point, the AG and most of the law enforcement agencies, they chumped the deuces at the Kentucky Fried Five. They was like, shit, we ain't no closer today than we was then. So fuck it. But you know, not everybody was willing to give up hope. There was a man named George Keeney, formerly of the FBI and the Texas Rangers, and James Stroud, who was a lawman in Kilgore. They teamed up. They had been on the case since the beginning, and they just could not let it go. So they started all over from scratch. But the years kept on ticking by, and they still going through that evidence. They still going over everything. Still ain't no closer to getting it solved. And now the rumors from the street committee, oh my Lord, they have grown. Y'all know how the street committee goes. By now, the streets are saying that they was actually over at the Kentucky Fried Chicken selling drugs along with legs and thighs. Oh, yes. And then they said that somebody had fucked up the recipe for the dope, and that's why they got killed. Somebody else was out there talking about Church's Chicken was trying to send a message that a new bird was in town. Oh, my Lord. And then they said that somebody figured out that the 11 herbs and spices, when you added the cocaine, it made a potent new drug, and so they got killed for the recipe. Like, the shit was getting ridiculous. But in a small town, that's how shit go. The truth gets rewritten, and everybody got a cousin that saw something. So Keeney and Stroud, they decided to take this case to one of those cold case conventions where they chopped it up with some more crime-solving experts. And everybody kept saying that, you know what? Y'all got to use this new testing that's coming out, that DNA testing. Because mind you, it's like 2001 now, like 18 years after the murders. And guess what? They did exactly that. On September 11th, 2001, when the Twin Towers were coming down, Keeney was sending that blood evidence off to be DNA tested. Remember, there was blood on a box where the receipts were, and there was blood on a napkin and on the wall and on the floor. So what he decided to do was to send a sample of the blood from the cash box and the napkin. Let's just test this out first and see what this do. It turns out that Darnell Hartsfield's blood was on the box and Romeo Pinkerton's blood was on the napkin. Baby, we got our man. So they started looking into Romeo's alibi because remember, he said that he was in prison. Well, come to find out, Romeo had actually got out of prison a couple of days before the killings, not after the killings like he said. This nigga was running big game on them, and it took them damn near 20 years to figure that shit out. Lord have mercy. Now they decide, you know what, since DNA is doing its thing, let's test Opie Ann's pants to see if the DNA can tell us who raped her. They sent the DNA from the crotch area of her pants to the lab September 23rd, 2003. But y'all ain't gonna believe this. Please tell me why the DNA didn't match Darnell or Romeo or nobody else that they thought was associated with this case. Woo, woo. That means it's a third motherfucker that was out there with them. Hot damn, we back in business now. It's time to round these motherfuckers up. Well, on November 17th, they took it to the grand jury, and they indicted Darnell Hartsfield and Romeo Pinkerton on 5 counts each of capital murder. Now, Romeo, he went to trial August 6, 2007, and midway through his death penalty trial, he decided he didn't want to play with these people no more. He pleaded guilty to 5 murder charges and was like, you know what, I'll even snitch on my cousin if y'all want me to. Snitching hit differently when the death penalty is on the table. I ain't gonna call him no kind of names, because when old Sparky is involved, it's every man for himself. So Romeo eat like 5 life sentences on October 29, 2007. No possibility of parole for you, sir. Now, Darnell, He been in prison since 1995. I mean, off and on, he been in prison his whole life. But in 1995, that was the last go-round. He caught a 40-year bid for engaging in organized criminal activities. But Darnell was a G. He wasn't copping the shit that had to do with the Kentucky Fried Five killing. This nigga pleaded not guilty hard. Fuck your DNA. I said I wasn't there. I took a polygraph and I passed. Y'all niggas can't see me? Mm-mm. Darnell is typical criminal. He been denying this shit since it happened. And guess what? In 2003, they had him in front of a grand jury and he was like, "Excuse me, let me clear my throat." One more time for the motherfuckers in the back. I don't even eat chicken. I didn't have no criminal relations with them white people. Leave me the fuck alone. They got his ass on perjury for that shit. Gave him a life sentence. Now back to the killations. The trial started September 15th, 2008, and it lasted about 2 weeks. And of those 10 days, the defense, they only had 1 day that belonged to them. And they really just said, you know what? Don't worry about that DNA. Darnell said he didn't do it. He didn't do it. Okay. And we rest our case. Well, after deliberating about 2 hours on September 30th, 2008, the goddamn jury found Darnell Hartsfield guilty on all charges and convicted that ass of the capital murder for fatally shooting the Kentucky Fried Five. Now, at this point in time, Darnell was 47. He already had a life sentence for perjury, and they just tacked on another 5 life sentences. He just stood there and just took that shit like a G. Like, he didn't have no type of reaction whatsoever. All I know, he had no business being at the colonel's home of delicious breast and thighs, acting like that. That's all I got to say. Like, seriously. So Darnell and Romeo are off to continue being state property. Now, Darnell, he died of a stroke May 4th, 2022. That's only about, 2 years ago? He was 61 years old when he joined the ancestral plane, hopefully right by the fire. And your boy Romeo, Mr. Pinkerton, he's still around and kicking. Yeah, he's 67 years old and he is inmate number 023333541. And he is still yet holding on at the All-Red Correctional Facility in Iowa Park, Texas. And that, Noir Nation, is the story of Darnell Hartsfield and Romeo Pinkerton. 2 robbing, killing, almost got away with it motherfuckers from way back in the day that set it off in a motherfucking Kentucky Fried Chicken and held on to the title of their crime being one of Texas's longest unsolved murders in state history. Way to go down in history, guys. Woo, child. That was a lot. Like, many of our mayhem makers, these niggas just don't know how to get away with some shit and then stay out of trouble. Like, thank your patron saint of criminals and go sit your ass down somewhere. Like, how did you get away with the crime of the century in your little town for your whole big ass state and you stay going to prison over some other bullshit? I don't know if that's institutionalized or just criminal nigga shit. Like, they didn't leave town. They stayed right there in the faces of the victim's family, the police, and they was up in that motherfucking Kentucky Fried Chicken getting some motherfucking chicken. Of course they did. KFC in the 80s and 90s was the shit. A delicious bucket of the Colonel's finest yardbirds graced many a table on the regular. I'm sorry. That's not the point. The point is, remember this Noir Nation. The real criminals do real criminal shit 365 days of the year. They are audacious and they don't take time off and could give 2 shits because the law is around. So watch yourself. And if you deal with cash for your job or your personal, watch what you say when you anywhere other than the privacy of your own home or car. You know what I'm saying? You don't never know who's listening. Robbing is a crime as old as the world. As long as there are humans with money, there will be criminals that want that money. So protect your neck. And just like that, we put another episode of Melanin Mayhem in the history books, baby. Remember, this year we are not being stingy with our love. So go out and tell the world how much you love the country girl and all her twisted tales of mayhem. And if social media is your ministry, you can find me on Insta, Facebook, and YouTube at Melanin Mayhem Podcast. And on X, I'm Melanin Mayhem PC. This week, I want to shout out to the fan of the week, Miss Latiki Reese. She hit me up on IG with a request for the Atlanta child murders case. Hey, Latiki. You know, it's funny that you asked that. I have literally been doing some research on the case, but I don't know, y'all. I'm a little bit hesitant for a few reasons. One, it really doesn't fit the theme of Melanin Mayhem because there was never a melanated mayhem maker charged in any of those child murders. They screamed Wayne Williams from the top of the mountain, but they didn't charge him. Now, he was convicted of killing 2 adults, Jimmy Ray Payne and Nathaniel Cato. And 2, while the story is interesting, there's nothing really prolific about killing 2 people. I was thinking about making it like a special episode or something like that, but to do it justice, it's going to be way longer than an hour, so I'd have to chop it up into segments, and I don't know. We'll see. I got a file on that bad boy, so who knows? Maybe your boy Wayne Williams will let me interview him. Who knows? Anywho, Noir Nation, y'all ain't gonna believe it. It is snowing in Atlanta, and I am so far behind. So let me get to editing this podcast so it'll be ready for you all on Wednesday morning. Y'all know I love you to the moon and back. Just don't forget, I need y'all to stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, if you stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready. It's one love, Noir Nation, and your favorite country girl is out of here. Bye.